Hilary Robertson. Welcome to the latest episode of Harmonious World. And for this episode, I'm joined by the guitarist Chris Standring, whose new album is called Wonderful World, and it features his wonderful guitar playing alongside his trio and an orchestra. This is Chris's 13th album, and it's not just his first collection of jazz standards, but also his first ever large ensemble record featuring a full orchestra. Chris is well known as a jazz guitarist, but he's always loved orchestral music, and lockdown appears to have given him the opportunity to write arrangements for an orchestra alongside his own trio. Interestingly, his trio uses guitar, drums and bass rather than the piano as well. The album was recorded at Studio 2 at Abbey Road, and it has some very fine musicians on it. I hope you enjoy listening to our conversation.
Hello, Hilary. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very good.
So, welcome to Harmonious World. And talk to me about Wonderful World, your new album, because it really is wonderful.
Thank you. Well, this album's a long time coming. I've wanted to do a record like this for a long, long time. Of course, the expense is huge when you're talking about a large ensemble, because everybody needs to get paid, and they should. You know, the whole thing really happened when COVID hit, and I had the time to dedicate to a project like this, you know. I had been sort of kind of recording demos before COVID. So I think it was only when, it was only when COVID kicked in that I went, okay, let's do this now. Now's a good time to do this, you know. And, you know, it happened in stages. I actually started out doing the initial string arrangements for it. So, you know, I've got a studio here at my house, and, you know, I basically mocked up some demo trio recordings here, and then I scored strings around them in my program. So everything was fake apart from me. And then I contacted two people. I talked to my friend Mayank in London, who's been a business partner of mine for many years, and I said, I mean, I just casually mentioned that you know, I'm wanting to do a project like this, and he said, well, maybe I could partner with you. Okay. And suddenly a massive project became a little bit easier to negotiate and focus on, and so we decided that he would take care of the London string session we did at Abbey Road, and I would take care of all the rhythm section guys and mixing and marketing over here in the US. And then I involved my good friend Jeff Gascoigne in London, who ended up rewriting all the strings and really doing a far better job than I could have possibly done. But I'm very glad I did the first round, because he knew exactly what I was looking for. So it was very easy to talk to him about overscoring, underscoring, letting the music breathe, you know, what the strings do here. Do they answer me? Do they snuggle around me? Things like that, you know. Yeah.
Right. And because it is interesting how the strings work, because they sometimes take a lead, and sometimes they're there at the start and they're going, here we go. And then other times they sort of creep in and you go, oh yeah, hang on, there's some strings in there. And it's really, it's a beautiful balance.
Yeah. That was the whole idea. I basically I was really adamant when I sort of conceptualized this and talked to Jeff about it, that the strings were not overscored, but we obviously needed to give them something to do. You know, you can't just write a bunch of long notes to support a melody. But I did have to emphasize that I needed to speak. It was about the melody of the guitar, and the strings were playing a very supportive role. But I'm crazy about harmony, and so is Jeff. So I said, look, have a field day with the harmony, but it just has to be snugly and scrunchy.
Yeah, no, and it is, and it's lovely. And I also like the fact that in your trio, you've just got you on guitar, then bass and drums.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because that was all part of the concept too. I didn't want anything to be overplayed. And when you're dealing with harmony, don't forget the guitar is a harmony instrument too, so I have the ability to play chords, but you've also got this string section which is all about harmony. So you bring a piano into the picture and all of a sudden you're on very dangerous territory, because there's all this harmony going on, and I wanted to eradicate that. So take the piano away, and it meant that if I just wanted to play one long note, the strings can do their thing around it, and nothing gets in the way, and everything breathes. It's beautiful. So it was definitely, before we even wrote a note, I knew this concept.
Right. And how did you go about choosing the tracks to include?
Well, first of all, I needed to play songs that would work in a trio format, which basically means that I needed to be able to play the melody and the chords at the same time to make a fully fledged, show on the guitar, if you will. You know what I mean? Performance on the guitar. So, and some songs don't lend themselves to do that. So I wanted to pick songs that really let the melody speak on the guitar, and I could also comp underneath it from time to time with chords. So that was the main thing, and also the other thing is, I wanted to know songs. So I've been playing a lot of these songs for years and years and years. I mean, I grew up studying jazz guitar, playing songs like Green Dolphin Street, for instance. I mean, I've known it forever. So there were a couple of songs I didn't know. I mean, Alfie being one. I wanted to choose songs that not only laid beautifully on the guitar and brought the melody out on the guitar, but really lent themselves to string writing. And with Burt Bacharach, he's very, very much into major harmony and moving harmony, which is lovely for strings. So it was just, and of course, it's a great melody. I mean, it's a classic melody. So that was a no-brainer.
Yeah, you mentioned Green Dolphin Street. That's a lovely version, actually.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's really nice. Oh, and Autumn in New York. I love that version that you do of that.
I really like it too. I mean, I remember Jeff saying when it was all done, he said, "Yeah, I think that's my least favorite song. It's a bit of a dirge." I said, "No, Jeff, no. This is one of the best tunes on the album. It's just beautiful."
It really is. Yeah.
So I'm with you on.
Good. And then, of course, you've got the vocal on What a Wonderful World.
Yeah. That's my good friend, Catherine Shaw, who I've known for a long, long time, about 20 years. I mean, we were friends for way before we even decided to work together. And anytime we did start working together, it was a breeze. So it was actually kind of we actually did a Christmas record together 10 years ago or something like that. And we wrote every single track together. So we had an experience with this kind of sentimental, nostalgic music together. And when I did this record, it was just an obvious choice. I didn't even think twice,
Yeah, and it's nice to have that vocal sort of intermission, if you like.
Well, I agree. I mean, a lot of people have said, why is there a vocal track on this album? Everything else is instrumental. And I said, well, that's why.
Yeah.
Because when you get to the middle, it's like, oh, this is a nice little breather,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about your background. So you were brought up in the UK. How did you, tell me about becoming a jazz guitarist. Obviously you became a jazz guitarist in the UK. How did that happen?
I became a jazz guitar player probably because I went to the London College of Music to study classical guitar, strangely enough. And when I got there, it just so happens that the people I became friends with were all like straight ahead jazz musicians, or would be, And they were all kind of auditioning and playing with the National Youth Jazz Orchestra. And they could sight read anything, and they could play all these standards that we're talking about. And it was just their world. And it was not my world. And I came from, well, early back in the day, classical guitar, but then I discovered rock and roll. And, you know, I was really more into the fusion world, listening to people like Larry Carlton and Robin Ford and Steve Lukather, all these West Coast guys over here. But when I met those guys, I thought, oh, there's a lot I don't know. So I really got ensconced in the music of Charlie Parker. You know, everybody was saying, that's what you need to listen to. You've got to get the Charlie Parker Omni book and listen to all the records. And I remember listening to early Charlie Parker records thinking, boy, the quality of these productions is so poor. Can I really listen to this music, you know? Because I'd been listening to all these West Coast beautifully sonically produced records. And I went back to this and I thought, okay, I've got to get past that because it was all recorded in the 50s, you know.
Yeah.
Just listen to the music and study what he's doing because it's astounding what he's doing. So I became very much ensconced in bebop. You know, I was nuts about Chet Baker and Cannonball Adderley and Red Garland and Wynton Kelly, Miles Davis. I mean, I love that era. It's really still my favorite era. But you know, I'd come from this fusion world, and I'm still in it, really. But so anyway, so that's so I've got this mishmash of influences. This classical guitar thing, this pseudo rock and roll, progressive rock, experimental thing that I grew up with too. And bebop, jazz guitar. So that entire mishmash. And obviously I'm a composer too. I love to write. So what am I going to do? I've got to draw from all these influences that I've grown up with. And that's it. That's who I be.
Right. Okay. So at what point did you then decide that? So you must have worked in London for 10 years or something, and then decided to jump.
I left music college. I left the music college, London College of Music, in 1983, and spent the next 7 years trying to get work, literally waiting by the phone. And you know, and it came in dribs and drabs. And I mean, there's, you know, I did tours and I put a band together, and I did a lot of recording sessions. I mean, I played on, Spitting Image. I did one of the series of that, and the Rita Rudner TV show. I mean, I was a call for hire and a ton of jingles and things like that. And whatever came my way, I was literally a call for hire in London. And but before I went to music college, I took a year out. In my gap year, I basically got on a plane and I came over here to the US, and I delivered pizzas and all the things that you do when you're 20 years old. And I would go to all the jazz clubs, and I would see all these heavyweight musicians playing at these little places. And so LA really got under my skin. So when I went back to London to music college after those 3 years, really what was in the back of my mind is, how can I get back there, you know?
Yeah.
And 10 years later, I made a few reconnaissance trips, and then the final year in February 1991, I remember booking about 5 club gigs in LA, all the top places. I don't know how I did it, don't know how I blagged my way. And I booked all my favorite players that I'd been listening to on records. I don't know how I did it. When you're young, you just do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do you got to lose? And also, I felt confident that I was becoming a good player, you know. So I guess these guys would kind of take me seriously. Anyway, so I booked about 5 gigs, and I remember saying to a friend of mine, I'm going to LA for 5 weeks, and I've got some gigs, you know. And he said, well, why are you coming back? You've got more gigs in LA than you've got in London. And I took that to heart, and I slept on it. And in the morning, I said to myself, right, I'm not coming home. I decided to move here. That was it.
Brilliant. As a sideline, we must know a lot of the same people, because I was in Nijo in 1980.
Really?
Yeah, 1980.
What do you play?
Baritone sax.
Okay.
So we must know some of the same people. So
every single one.
Yeah. So Ian Thomas, drummer.
Great friend.
There you go. So Dave Bishop, Jamie Talbot, all of those guys. Yeah. Chris Smith.
I hired them all. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we must know a lot of the same people.
Everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, that was that was my era. Well, actually, I joined Nijo and I was never the guitar player. The guitar player was a guy called Chris Watson.
Yeah, I remember Chris.
Yeah. And I subbed for him on about 10 dates, something like that, over a period of 2 years.
Wow.
So, I was a Nijo guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you know what? You seem familiar now. I have a funny feeling I do remember you now you come to mention it. Okay.
Do you remember Steve Melling, the pianist?
Very well.
Okay,
Yes.
well, we were an item for a good few years in that period. So we undoubtedly were in the same place and doing gigs and stuff like that. So when I saw you first, I thought there was something familiar about you. So yeah, we definitely have been in the same room at the same time.
We may have done some gigs together.
We may indeed, yeah.
I bet we have.
Yeah, because you left music college in 83. I graduated in 84, and I did a similar thing, that I was gigging around, doing stuff in and out of London, and you know spending terrible nights in the 606 club and that sort of thing.
Sure.
In the original 606 club on the King's Road,
not where it
is. Yeah, sure. So we definitely have connections.
That's it.
So yeah, very good. Okay, well, so how was your lockdown?
I loved it. I mean, I know it's probably a typical musician's response, but it's just an excuse for me to practice. And, to tell you the truth, Hilary, I decided, okay, this is it. We've got to embrace this. There's something we can do about this. How am I going to put this to good use? So I went back to school in my mind, and I studied string arranging to a higher level. And I was writing all these exercises, and not even exercises. I was writing my music. I was doing the first draft of my album, and I recorded it and I rewrote it probably 3 times. So I was online Googling about country movement and all that stuff, counterpoint, things like that. Really, I embraced it wholeheartedly, So I kind of loved it, and it was a big learning experience for me, and it enabled me to get this record off the ground. I mean, I'm kind of over it now, as I'm sure we all are.
Yeah.
But,
and I think it's interesting. I've spoken to. Well, I actually, this is as we are recording this, I've just had my 75th episode of Harmonious World.
No kidding.
Yeah.
You.
I know. Who'd have thought?
Amazing. Congrats.
So I've spoken to a lot of musicians.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how, obviously, one of the downsides has been no live music, no going out, no gigging, no traveling, no seeing the world and travel and gigging with different people and everything. But actually, for a lot of people who have embraced it, as you have done, and I've done, I mean, that's why I created this podcast, so that actually we've made connections with people and we've learned new stuff.
Yes.
That we wouldn't have done otherwise.
No.
So it's amazing.
It's been good in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. So this album comes out on the 3rd of September.
That's right.
Have you got dates in to tour it? And are you just going to tour it as the trio? Or what are you going to do?
Well, I've got a whole separate jazz career here, doing my more commercial stuff. So I've got a string of dates coming up. Actually, I just did 2, 3, so I'm kind of I'm performing my more commercial music, and I'm sort of interjecting some of this new stuff. But I've got to be very careful because it's a very different crowd, and sometimes it's not quite as a sit-down crowd. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I know.
It's, you know, like for instance, if I'm booked to do a festival, for instance, which I just did a couple of days ago in New York, you know, an outdoor festival, it's very difficult. You know, it's really hard to sit there and play a kind of a intimate version of How Insensitive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you know, if it was a legit straight ahead audience, you could do it because that's what they come for. But this is not that. It's a very R&B crowd. So, you know, they kind of want to get their groove on a little bit, you know, and I'm a bit of a ham. I like to entertain, but I love to play too. So, you know, I'm not one of these guys who only wants to try and get over to an audience. It has to be about the music for me too. Anyway, so to really answer your question, yes, I've got something coming up in London on November the 5th at Cadogan Hall with the orchestra, which will be nice.
I'm so going to that.
Yeah, you got to come. And also, I'm talking to a few promoters to try and do some performing arts centres using local city orchestras, and I can just bring my trio. So that's the cost-effective way to do it. And a lot of the cities have got really strong orchestras. I need to get a bit more aggressive about doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm talking to a few people and they seem interested. We'll see. You know, it's a very ambitious thing. So if I can realistically next year get a string of orchestra dates, I'll be pretty happy.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I will see you on the 5th of November.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, no, I'm going to get my ticket in a minute.
Great.
I'll be there. So yeah, fantastic. And then we can work out face to face how we, you know, where we've been in the same room.
Well, you know, to tell you the truth, I'm picturing you sitting in the front row playing your baritone saxophone.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you know, you're really familiar to me suddenly.
Right. And actually, we would have been very close, wouldn't we? Because I usually, it depends which way, but usually I would be here and then the drums would be at the back and you'd just be there. So, you know. I'd
be on your right side, I think.
Yeah, on my right-hand side, yeah.
Yeah.
So there we go.
I'm sure we even said hi.
I'm sure we did. And I'm sure we know all the same people. Steve Sidwell. Yeah. Have you worked with Steve recently?
Great friend. And Neil too.
Oh,
and Richard.
Yeah. Well, so Neil Sidwell is the same age as me. And we were doing our A-levels on the back of the Nijo bus going to, we were doing revision on the bus because we'd be like, God, we've got French tomorrow, we've got whatever.
Yeah. That's great.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it? Fantastic. Oh, it's really nice to talk to you.
Yeah, you too. Yeah,
brilliant. Well, thank you for your time.
Sure.
And good luck with the album, but it is beautiful.
I'm very proud of it. It's I feel like, I know this sounds a bit weird, but I feel like I finally made a record that I would like to listen to.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's the kind of album that I put on, you know, and you know, not to say I don't want to hear my records, but I'm a bit old school, you know. Given my druthers, I'm going to put on a Miles Davis record. I'm going to put on Kind of Blue or Milestones or an Oscar Peterson record. It's just that maybe it's my age too, you know.
But I think also, you know, you were talking about Charlie Parker earlier, and I think, you know, Charlie Parker, John Coltrane, Miles Davis, there is a reason why those guys are seen as giants, because you do keep going back to them.
Yes.
You have to.
Yeah, but also they created a vibe. It wasn't just they play so great. You know, they went in the studio, and Miles Davis was a king of this. he went and said, okay, I want you to only approach it like this. It's like, when he went in and recorded Kind of Blue, he had lead sheets, but he had parameters. He said, I want this to be pretty chill, not overplaying and just beautifully musical and things like that. And so every time I'm making a record, my number one question is, what is this? It's not like, can I record another good song and can I play well on it? That's not enough. It's, what is this? How do I hang my hat on this?
Right.
What is different and unique? How am I going to say something with this piece of music? Which is what this record did so well. I think we went back to Nelson Riddle and
definitely.
And actually, Vince Mendoza, who clearly listened to Nelson Riddle, back in the day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But that's about standing on the shoulders of giants, isn't it? It's that you learn from it. It's not the same.
Mm.
I'm constantly amazed by the fact that there are still only 12 musical notes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet, look at the difference. Yeah. It's incredible.
Yeah. I know, it is astounding. I mean, for the longest time, I remember, you probably know John Pericelli.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, good friend of mine. I spoke to him in London recently, and we spoke for hours on the phone, because it's been so long. And he said there was a time, I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying this. He said there was a time where I stopped practicing because I thought I kind of knew it. And he said it was only much later that I realized I don't know anything at all, and which gave me so much more vocabulary and, just stuff to really dig into. And I said to him, you didn't know what you didn't know. And to tell you the truth, I totally understand that. I really resonated with that, because for the longest time I thought, okay, I can play the guitar, I can play jazz standards in all the keys, my time is good and I got a good sound, I'm good. No, I'm not good at all. That's where you start, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's I can't remember why I got into that conversation, but it's a never-ending process, and I feel like right now that I'm just beginning. There's all this stuff I'm discovering that I didn't know what I didn't know.
No, there you go. Brilliant. Well, great to talk to you. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in November.
I'd love it. Sounds great, Hilary.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Harmonious World, and I hope you enjoyed listening to my conversation with Chris. I have several really exciting interviews lined up, and also don't forget about the past episodes. We've now got 75 episodes you could listen to, so there's plenty to choose from. But thank you for joining me once more, and I look forward to speaking to you next time on Harmonious World. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.